Winning the lottery is the only moment in America where you can go broke faster by getting rich. One scratch off, and suddenly people are speed-running financial ruin like it's a sport. And trust me, the disasters that came next make this look tame. 1. A man won millions and immediately decided the laws of physics, math, and basic adulthood no longer applied. He bought a mansion the size of an airport terminal, then filled it with luxury furniture he never even unwrapped. He purchased 3 sports cars despite not having a driver's license and announced he would learn on the way. His friends, who multiplied overnight like gremlins after midnight, helped drain his bank account with parties so loud the neighbors' cows stopped producing milk. He even built a private zoo because why should the government decide who gets a giraffe? Shockingly, the upkeep alone was enough to send him back to the financial Stone Age. The mansion got foreclosed, the cars got repoed, and the giraffe was probably the only one who saw this coming. Turns out, money can't buy happiness, but it can absolutely buy a one-way ticket back to living in your cousin's basement. 2. One woman hit the jackpot and immediately declared war on her electric bill by replacing every appliance she owned with industrial versions meant for restaurants. A commercial freezer, a bakery-grade oven, a soda fountain, a soft-serve machine. Her kitchen became a mall food court without the mall. Her power consumption was so high, the electric company sent her a polite letter that basically said, "What exactly are you doing in there?" She said she always wanted to cook like a professional, which would have been inspiring if she cooked anything besides frozen pizza and toaster waffles. After 6 months of utility bills that looked like ransom demands, the money evaporated. She sold the appliances at a loss, went back to her regular old oven, and the electric company quietly removed her from the watch list reserved for suspiciously hungry households. 3. A newly rich couple decided to beat the system by buying an entire neighborhood's worth of property just so they'd never have annoying neighbors again. Romantic? Yes. Economically suicidal? Absolutely. They bought 12 houses, all in cash, then realized they had to pay property taxes on 12 houses. They also thought landscaping couldn't be that expensive, which is precisely what you think before hiring a crew whose weekly fee could kill a small business. After trying to Airbnb the houses for extra income, an idea that tanked because they refused to allow guests who seemed loud, they eventually lost most of the homes to unpaid taxes. Ironically, the very same neighbors they tried to avoid ended up being the people who moved in after foreclosure. That's the real jackpot, watching your financial empire crumble into a cul-de-sac reunion you never wanted. 4. A man bought a luxury RV so enormous it could be classified as a hostile takeover of the highway. He had never camped a day in his life, but decided he was going to tour America like a legend. Instead, he realized he couldn't drive anything larger than a sedan without panic sweating through his shirt. The RV sat in storage for years because he was too afraid to take it on the road, racking up monthly storage fees roughly equivalent to adopting a second family. When he finally built up the courage to sell it, he discovered luxury RVs depreciate faster than cheap sunglasses at the beach. The man who once dreamed of rolling through the Rockies ended up rolling bankruptcy paperwork into a neat little ball and tossing it into the RV he could never drive. 5. One winter decided to live like royalty, which apparently meant turning his home into a castle. Complete with fake stone walls, battlements, and a plastic moat he assured everyone would become real soon. He purchased an animatronic dragon that roared every hour, which his HOA addressed with a letter so stern it probably singed at the edges. He hosted royal banquets, where he dressed as a king and forced guests to address him as Your Richness. Nobody was surprised when construction costs, maintenance, and general delusion drained his winnings dry. The day the bank foreclosed on his kingdom, he reportedly told the repo crew they were invading foreign soil. They took the dragon first. Honestly, a mercy for everyone. 6. One guy spent his winnings on the most American dream possible, opening a restaurant despite knowing absolutely nothing about food, management, or reality. He called it Money to Burn BBQ, which turned out to be prophetic in the worst possible way. He hired friends who couldn't cook, servers who couldn't serve, and a manager whose main qualification was "seems confident." His brilliant marketing strategy was to offer unlimited ribs for $5, believing volume would compensate for profit. It did not. His food cost per week was roughly the GDP of a mid-size island nation. Customers complained the ribs tasted like pessimism with sauce. But the real killer was his decision to offer free beer on weekends, which attracted crowds who treated the place like a frat house with slightly better chairs. Within a year, he closed the restaurant, sold the smoker, and learned that sometimes the American dream comes with an American eviction notice. 7. One woman decided to invest in high fashion, which in her mind meant buying every designer handbag ever made, including limited edition pieces that cost more than a modest car. She displayed them in glass cases like museum artifacts, insisting they were assets. Unfortunately, handbags depreciate faster than edible glitter after a birthday party. She treated her collection like a retirement plan until the moment she realized retirement plans generally require math. When the money ran out, she tried selling the bags only to discover that the collector's market she had counted on consisted mostly of teenagers offering $40 and a Starbucks gift card. She ended up pawning half the collection and keeping the rest in storage, where they now sit as a shrine to the world's most expensive identity crisis. 8. A jackpot winner bought an exotic pet collection that made his house look like a cartoon villain's lair. Tigers, parrots, lemurs. He collected animals like they were Funko Pops. He insisted he had a natural gift with wildlife, usually right before an animal demonstrated that he did not. Animal control visited so often, they probably had a punch card. The food costs alone were monstrous, and veterinary bills came in like subscription boxes he never subscribed to. When he could no longer afford the care, sanctuaries swooped in to rescue the animals, and he returned to regular human pets, debt collectors. His exotic empire dissolved, and so did his bank account, proving once again you're not Dr. Dolittle just because you have money and zero restraint. 9. One man decided to create his own sports team, specifically a semi-pro football squad, consisting entirely of his buddies from high school. He bought uniforms, booked stadium time, hired a coach, and hosted tryouts that felt like a midlife crisis disguised as athletics. The team lost every game by margins that would make a Pop Warner coach quit his job. The players demanded salaries, the coach demanded sanity, the fans, all 12 of them, demanded refunds. He poured millions into this backyard fantasy until the league dissolved, the team quit, and the scoreboard, still stuck on their final blowout loss, was auctioned off to pay debt. At least he can say he technically owned a sports franchise, which is something rich people brag about in documentaries right before the bankruptcy chapter. 10. A woman won big and decided to purchase an entire chain of tanning salons, despite never having worked in one or, from the looks of it, ever having visited one. She insisted she was going to revolutionize the tanning industry. Her innovation? LED lights shaped like inspirational quotes. The customers didn't love it, neither did her employees, who reportedly asked, "Why does my tanning bed say Live Laugh Bronze?" She underestimated how expensive it is to run multiple locations, especially when you keep giving away free tans for brand loyalty. When the bills stacked too high, the chain folded, the lights dimmed, and she quietly returned to her day job, except now with a business resume that reads like a cautionary tale printed in neon. 11. A guy used his winnings to enter the world of high-stakes horse racing, despite knowing absolutely nothing about horses. He bought a racehorse for an obscene amount of money and named it something inspirational like Destiny's Fortune, which was ironic because the horse's destiny was losing every race it entered. He bought designer saddles, paid for elite training programs, and even hired a psychic who claimed she could help the horse mentally prepare. The horse, meanwhile, was mentally preparing to eat grass. After blowing millions, he tried selling the horse, only to discover that losing horses are worth about as much as a rusty lawnmower. His racing dreams died, and so did his finances, proving that if you want to gamble badly, casinos are cheaper. 12. One jackpot winner bought a luxury yacht so big it looked like a Bond villain's bonus level, but forgot a tiny detail: docking fees. Turns out when a boat is the size of a floating hotel, marinas charge you rent that could buy an actual apartment. He tried sailing it himself to save money, immediately crashed into a pier, and racked up repair bills that made the original purchase look like a coupon deal. He hosted one massive party, realized alcohol costs triple when floating, and spent the rest of the time begging friends to come aboard just so it felt used. Eventually, the yacht was repossessed, and he learned that the ocean wins every financial argument. 13. One woman decided her new wealth meant she absolutely needed to become a pop star. She booked studio time, hired producers, bought the most expensive microphones available, and recorded an album that critics would later describe as sonic confusion. She held a massive release party with catered sushi and hired dancers, but forgot to budget for marketing, distribution, or, minor detail, vocal lessons. She spent everything trying to become famous and ended up with 5,000 unsold CDs, a music video filmed in her garage, and a bankruptcy judge who probably still hums her worst track just to amuse himself. She didn't become a star, but she did become a cautionary tale, which is something. 14. A man spent millions trying to build the ultimate home arcade, complete with rare machines, VR rooms, and a custom animatronic band modeled after old pizza place mascots. Yes, he essentially spent a fortune recreating a haunted Chuck E. Cheese. The electric bill alone could have powered a suburban town. But the real disaster came when he decided to keep the arcade open to the public for extra cash, which mostly attracted teenagers who treated the place like a gladiator arena for soda-fueled chaos. Machines broke faster than he could fix them. The animatronics malfunctioned in ways that traumatized children, and within a year he shut it down. Now he's left with a house full of broken machines and a robot mouse that refuses to stop twitching. 15. And my personal favorite, a winner bought so many luxury sneakers he had to convert 2 bedrooms into a climate-controlled shoe museum. He never wore them. Oh no, wearing them would ruin the value. Instead, he spent his days photographing them and talking about market appreciation, which vanished the moment he realized sneaker value works like cryptocurrency, but with laces. He never resold a single pair, partly because he overvalued everything, and partly because he couldn't emotionally handle parting with the collection. When the money dried up, he tried selling them in bulk, but no one wanted 1,000 shoes curated by someone who treated Air Jordans like fine wine. The collection eventually went for pennies, and he went from sneaker king to sock budget guy in record time. 16. A man won a mid-sized jackpot and instantly decided he was going to become a full-time gentleman inventor, which apparently meant buying a warehouse, filling it with absurd gadgets, and declaring himself the next Steve Jobs without ever inventing anything more complex than a slightly ergonomic spoon. He sank millions into prototypes that looked like rejected props from late-night infomercials, including a self-heating scarf powered by AA batteries and a treadmill desk that shook violently whenever someone typed. Investors, meaning his equally confused friends, quickly backed out. He hired engineers who kept quitting because his ideas violated both physics and taste. Within 2 years, the warehouse was empty, his account was even emptier, and the only patent he ever filed was for something called the hands-free sandwich holder, which the examiner rejected with a note that simply said, "Please stop." 17. A woman decided her winnings were best spent pursuing her lifelong dream of becoming the world's greatest backyard gardener. Harmless, right? Except she immediately hired a team of landscape designers to build a botanical garden that looked like someone grafted Versailles onto a suburban lot. She bought exotic plants that required climate-controlled environments she didn't own, imported koi fish so expensive they could have gone to college, and installed fountains that broke every time the wind blew too hard. Her water bill became a hostage situation. She hosted garden parties where she lectured guests about soil synergy, but the plants kept dying because she overwatered everything like she was trying to drown the concept of horticulture itself. Eventually, she ran out of money, the plants withered, the koi disappeared mysteriously, her neighbor's cat denies everything, and the garden returned to its natural state: dirt, disappointment, and a half-functioning fountain spraying water sideways. 18. One guy decided he was going to flip houses, except he forgot the part where you're supposed to know anything about houses. He bought 5 fixer-uppers in a single weekend because the market waits for no man, then stared at the first broken water heater like it was an alien artifact. His renovations were basically crimes against architecture. He painted over mold, installed floors that sloped like ski ramps, and proudly bragged that he removed unnecessary support beams to create an open layout. Contractors begged him to stop. City inspectors developed migraines. Prospective buyers fled during showings, one claiming she could hear the house crying. In the end, he sold nothing, lost everything, and the city condemned one of the properties for safety reasons, which is what happens when you ignore both gravity and common sense at the same time. 19. A jackpot winner decided to build the ultimate home theater, the kind you'd expect a supervillain to use for mandatory staff movie nights. He bought a massive screen, plush seats, surround sound that could trigger car alarms, and lighting synced to musicals no one asked for. Then he realized he had forgotten the minor detail of soundproofing. His neighbors didn't appreciate being unwilling extras in his nightly action movie marathons. The police were called so often they knew the runtime of his favorite films. He kept adding upgrades to enhance the experience until the electrical system begged for mercy, and one unfortunate power surge turned his audio setup into a war zone of smoking cables. After repairing everything twice and paying noise fines like a monthly subscription, he went broke and sold the entire system to a dentist who just wanted to intimidate patients. 20. One woman used her winnings to launch a luxury candle brand, which sounded charming until you realized she priced the candles at $800 each and described the scents as things like wealth humility and whisper of my success. Nobody knew what that meant. Reviews described them as smelling like expensive confusion. She rented a showroom, hired models to stand next to candles like it was a perfume commercial, and insisted they wear gold robes for brand energy. Meanwhile, her production costs spiraled because she used handcrafted imported wax that had to be shipped in crates from a country she couldn't pronounce. She spent more on packaging than she made in sales. After 6 months, she had 5,000 unsold candles, and one accountant gently suggesting that maybe people don't want to burn a paycheck on their coffee table. 21. A man took his jackpot and did the least financially advisable thing. He opened a hobby store dedicated entirely to trains. Not general hobbies, just trains. Model trains, conductor hats, train posters, and a single whistle he kept behind glass like it was the Hope Diamond. He assumed everyone secretly loved trains as much as he did. They did not. Kids wanted games, adults wanted crafts. He offered neither. He tried hosting train evenings, which nobody attended except one elderly man who brought sandwiches and left crumbs everywhere. Inventory piled up, dust collected, and his monthly overhead looked like a dare from the universe. When the store finally closed, he still insisted the business model was sound. The public was just not emotionally prepared for the locomotive renaissance. 22. A winner bought a fleet of luxury cars without understanding that insurance companies are not, in fact, charities. He collected them like Pokemon, Lamborghini, Ferrari, McLaren, cars so low to the ground they probably needed emotional support to clear a speed bump. He parked them in the driveway because he forgot garages have limited capacity. When the first hailstorm hit, he discovered the financial consequences of owning 6 hypercars without adequate coverage. Repairs drained him faster than a high-interest credit card used exclusively at Chick-fil-A. When he tried to sell them, he realized cars depreciate faster than his patience, and the dealers offered sympathy valuations. By the time the dust settled, he had one dented sports car left and a driveway full of regrets. 23. A woman used her winnings to create a wellness retreat in her backyard, despite living in a neighborhood where backyards are roughly the size of a cereal box. She installed a meditation dome, a tiny waterfall that sounded like someone slowly pouring water into a bucket, and a sauna so small people had to enter single file like penguins boarding a submarine. She invited clients to reconnect with nature, although nature consisted of one tree, a stressed-looking squirrel, and the sound of her neighbor's lawnmower. The retreat never turned a profit, partly because she overpriced the sessions and partly because people don't want to meditate while staring at a chain-link fence. She ran out of money keeping the sauna heated year-round, and the backyard returned to its original purpose, a place where trash bins go to think about their lives. 24. A man invested heavily in collectible figurines, convinced they would make him future-proof rich. He bought limited editions, special colorways, and items so rare they came with certificates that looked printed on recycled napkins. He built display cases with museum lighting and made guests wear gloves if they got within breathing distance of the collection. He called it his plastic empire. Unfortunately, the market tanked, collectors moved on, and his empire became a graveyard of brightly colored regret. When he tried to sell them, he discovered the only people offering to buy were teenagers with barely functional allowance money. He eventually pawned the entire collection for a tiny fraction of the price, and the shop owner didn't even bother asking why each figure had its own velvet pillow. 25. One jackpot winner decided to start a private island resort despite not owning an island, understanding hospitality, or acknowledging that mosquitoes exist. He leased a tiny strip of land that looked like a sandbar pretending to be Hawaiian real estate. He built huts that collapsed in mild breezes, bought hammocks that dumped guests onto the ground, and installed a bar stocked exclusively with high-end tequila because he forgot other drinks exist. His exclusive clientele consisted mainly of curious locals and one confused sea turtle. Maintenance costs ballooned, storms wrecked everything repeatedly, and eventually he shut the resort down after realizing the ocean does not accept apology letters. The island now sits empty except for one lonely hammock and a brochure that promises luxury you've never imagined and never should. 26. A woman decided her big win was the perfect opportunity to travel the world, except she refused to fly coach because she believed winning made her allergic to discomfort. She booked first-class everything, stayed only in penthouse suites, and treated room service like a competitive sport. She posted photos of her meals with captions like self-care, even though the meals cost more than someone's weekly groceries. She never budgeted, never tracked expenses, and assumed the money would last forever because experiences are priceless, which is something people say right before checking their bank account and hearing the sad violin from every cliché movie. When she finally returned home, she had memories, debt, and a single complimentary robe from a hotel that unknowingly cost her a mortgage payment. 27. A man won big and opened a nightclub he named after himself, a bold move for someone with zero charisma. The club was supposed to be glamorous, but it looked like someone glued LED lights to a basement and hoped for the best. He spent wildly on champagne fountains, a DJ who could barely operate Spotify, and velvet ropes he replaced every week because they didn't drape dramatically enough. Customers came once out of curiosity, and never again. The bartenders quit after being paid in exposure, and the bouncer left because he was tired of people asking where the real club was. When the money vanished, the nightclub shut down, leaving behind empty bottles, unpaid bills, and a giant neon sign with his name on it, now flickering sadly in a storage unit. 28. One winner thought he could beat boredom by buying a helicopter, despite not knowing how to fly and having the spatial awareness of a goldfish in a maze. He took a single lesson, declared himself naturally gifted, and then immediately hired a pilot because he realized helicopters are basically airborne blender blades held together by prayer. He used the chopper for grocery runs, which disturbed everyone within a 5-mile radius. Fuel costs burned through his winnings faster than the rotor blades could spin. Eventually, he sold the helicopter at a massive loss, leaving him with nothing but noise complaints, a pilot who blocked his number, and a fridge still containing the same groceries he could have bought with Uber Eats. 29. A woman won the lottery and decided to recreate her favorite childhood amusement park ride in her backyard, a spinning teacup. Except she didn't stop at one teacup. She built an entire low-budget amusement park. She installed a mini roller coaster that rattled ominously, a merry-go-round powered by an engine that sounded like a dying lawnmower, and concession stands manned by friends who regretted saying yes. The neighborhood kids loved it until everything broke. Constantly. Maintenance costs ballooned, insurance premiums exploded, and inspectors threatened to shut her down after discovering the coaster was held together by hope and discount bolts. When the money ran out, the amusement park closed, leaving behind a teacup ride that now spins only when the wind is being petty. 30. A man spent his winnings on becoming a motivational speaker despite being the least motivating person alive. His message was essentially, "I got lucky, so can you," which audiences found about as inspiring as a damp paper towel. He rented auditoriums, printed merch, hired a hype man, and delivered speeches that sounded like someone reading a fortune cookie through a megaphone. Ticket sales were disastrous. Reviews were worse. One attendee wrote, "I left more unmotivated than when I arrived." He kept pouring money into the brand until both his confidence and bank balance hit zero. His final gig had 3 attendees, one lost tourist, one bored retiree, and one guy who just needed a place to sit. It was the perfect ending to a career built entirely on delusion. 31. And then there was the man who bought a mansion solely to host themed parties every night of the week. Pirates on Monday, disco on Tuesday, ancient Rome on Wednesday, and so on, like a calendar created by someone allergic to moderation. He bought costumes, hired performers, installed mood lighting that confused wildlife, and built a tiki bar with a thatched roof that failed every weather challenge. The parties drew crowds at first, but the themes got stranger, Victorian ghost tea night, and the expenses soared. The neighbors despised him, the city fined him repeatedly. Eventually, he was spending thousands per night to entertain people who stopped showing up long before he noticed. When the money dried up, The mansion was repossessed, the costumes were auctioned off, and the only thing left from his grand experiment was a disco ball swaying gently in an empty room, much like his bank account. And that's the financial carnage for today. Proof humans can vaporize wealth faster than microwaving foil. Tell me the dumbest one below, and if you want more chaos, you know what to do.